here I am, the big RZA, money, new budget. They gave you $4 million to make the album. So I'm like in the store, I'm like, give me that, give me that, give me that, give me that. And some guy comes over to me and says, "You're not a real musician."
What?
I'm like, what you talking about? Like, I'm platinum. He's like, "Nah, man, you're not a real musician. You don't play instruments."
How are you?
Peace. What up, Tom? Bong bong.
I was telling you this before we turned the microphones on, but I loved this this record. I mean, I love these pieces of music. They're just beautiful.
Thank you. Like I said, that's flattering.
They were inspired by notebooks that you had when you were a kid. So let's start there. If we were to open up these notebooks, paint me a picture of like what would be inside them.
Well, first you'll see some very loose leaf papers turning brown because it's that old. The book dates back from lyrics I was writing from the age of 14 to 19. So it's going through high school. You may get some mustard stains. I wasn't a vegan then. There's a few mustard stains on some of the pages from the burgers or hot dogs at lunch. But more importantly, there's hundreds of pages of lyrics and ideas that I was going through as a teenager, going through high school, having my first, exploration into, substances, friendship, girls, imaginations, all these things was captured in this book as lyrics.
So I mean, you've drawn on that book and you've drawn on your life for a lot of your music up to this point. But to talk to me about why a ballet?
This book actually was left behind because it was like considered not good enough as I moved on to new lyrics and stuff, right? So this like, you know what I mean? So, you know what I mean? Like a writer, you write and then you keep getting better, then like, oh, that's corny. You don't like it no more. But then during the pandemic, I went back and looked at it and realized, wow, this is almost like a diary of my youth. And so I first started to write music to it, and I thought maybe I would lyrically perform it with a very unique cadence. But as I started writing the music itself started telling the story. I called up the president of Universal, Evan Lamberg, and we met, and I was like, "Yo, Evan, I'm writing my first opera," because I was going to take all these lyrics.
Yeah.
He's like, "No, there's an opera is in Italian, brother. You got." He said, "That's more like," he said, "what you describe it as more like a ballet." So yeah, I know, but okay. So then I started reimagining it as a ballet.
I love that you kind of grew up going like, oh, I don't really care about this. I'm hip hop. This is so, and now you're starting to embrace it. You're finding your home in it. But that kind of goes for your music overall. Like you've been making original music for decades. When did you start realizing that you weren't just a producer, you were a composer?
It was like just through the idea of writing music for movies and everything, and seeing that my template was expanding, seeing that my ears was expanding. I've been hired to do commercials and they would give me orchestras. I would write the music and do it. So and then I realized that I'm actually a composer. Like I kept looking at myself as a producer, because that's the hip hop title for the guy who makes the beats. But I realized, no, I'm a composer. And I've been composing my whole life in all reality. Even though before I didn't understand what a D major scale was when I was making platinum albums, right? I was just making it off my ear. But once I started studying the theories of music and all that and understanding the different instruments and their range and all that, it just opened my brain. And so that happened years ago, And so by the time we get to 2020, and I find these books, I'm able to sit at my piano, similar to how look at Elton John, Bernie Taupin would give him lyrics, and he would sit at that piano and write a song to what he's reading.
Yeah,
I've acquired that ability as well, and I just started composing these pieces, I just fell in love with what I was doing. Got some compliments from my wife. She's like, "Oh, that sounds beautiful, baby." And so that don't hurt, right?
Yeah.
And I did take the time. I got to be honest with you, Tom. I did take the time to start reading about the classical greats. Beethoven, Mozart, of course, Bach, Chopin, Haydn, Liszt. And I'm reading books, I'm studying, and I'm composing my heart into it as well. All those different things are where I'm at now. And this album here is my first attempt.
Yeah.
It's not like, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony.
Yeah.
Where you got to just take the small piece, Ode to Joy.
Yeah.
because the whole thing, you might, it might not be easy on the average listener.
I want to, like I say, it's really cinematic music. I want to talk a little bit later about like how you ended up learning composition and learning harmonies. But it's important that I point out that a lot of this stuff was in you from the beginning, whether you had ways to put it out on paper or not. And I kind of want to go back to the early days and talk a little bit about the early days of you making music. There's a legend about you that I really love, and I kind of wanted to hear from you, is that you loved hip hop so much when you were a kid, you took on all these sort of odd jobs to afford a turntable and to afford a mixer. What was your favorite of the odd jobs you took on when you were a kid?
I think my favorite job was actually selling newspapers on the Verrazano Bridge. It was a weird job. A lot of breathing in exhaust from cars. So what happened is back then it was a toll bridge.
Yeah.
So every direction you had to stop and pay for the toll. And in the morning, the traffic was so long that it could be 30 cars in line in 10 rows of this.
Yeah.
Right. And then you had, of course, the truck lanes, which were way at the back, and you had the express lane for the people who had whatever. Right. But point being made is here I am out there with New York Daily News, selling it to whoever's driving. Who forgot to get their paper, they could get it from me right there. Me, my brother, a lot of us out there. Even Raekwon would be out there some days. But point being made is that for every paper you sell, you get a dime. 100 papers, that's $10.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was averaging about $12 to $15 a day. The first day was less because I would get $10. If I'm in the truck lane, that's the worst lane. But I work my way up to get to the middle lane, and I get about $15 a day. And that $15, you figure back then a turntable will cost you about $95 for a straight arm. I didn't know that I needed a curve arm. Okay?
Yeah.
So, but I bought the straight arm turntable. I paid another $60 for a needle or whatever. We bought a mixer for $125. We bought a headphone. We stuck the headphone inside the mixer so it could become a mic. And it was a dream that was pushing me. But that was a fun job, though.
What music were you saying? Like, I know your work with Wu-Tang Clan so well, and for people who don't know, it's like one of the reasons you're a groundbreaking producer is you did very unconventional samples, especially on 36 chambers. Stuff that had never been sampled before, stuff that sort of sounded grimier, sounded dirtier, sounded more backroom than super commercial and polished. But like when you were DJing like block parties and all that stuff, were you playing just normal, conventional hip hop and dance? And
to be honest, yes and no, right? So I'm the guy that if everybody is playing, let's take one of the old disco break called the Assembly Line by the Commodores. I don't know if you know that one, but
how does that go?
The break goes,
Yeah.
Everybody is scratch that. But in the middle of the song, there's a part where Lionel Richie goes, where there's all these twinkle bells that go, life, you gotta try to change. This ain't the future world. It's only the only way. Doo-doo. There's some big echo voice come in. I'm the type of guy that'll throw that on in the middle of the party. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then go to the break. I'm the type of guy that'll take the Disney record of Peter Pan, right, and go and take the bassoon and go. So I was that DJ.
Would the crowd dig it? Would the crowd get into it?
I think they did. It's like whether they did or not, right? No, people. No, I was the type of guy that the older DJs would let me get my hour. You know, because I was more of a, trickster, under my arms, under my legs.
Yeah.
You know, that guy, and then throwing in the most craziest things. You know, I may take. I remember I had this record called Wild Man Steve. He was a comedian, and he was like, my God, this is crazy. And I'll be like, my God. Then I'll throw in Heartbeat from Heartbeat. And then you feel, my God. Heartbeat. And then you feel, my God.
Oh,
yeah, so I was that guy.
Yeah, so you were a weirdo from the beginning. You were.
I guess so. That's weird. I guess so.
Or a pioneer, a revolutionary, weirdo in the most complimentary Canadian way.
The older I get, the more I know that I was pretty zoned out.
I want to talk to you about this, and listen, you don't got to tell me about it if you want to, and I don't really want you to tell the story. But in the lore of Wu-Tang, there's this really pivotal moment in the early 90s. You get charged with assault. You stare down 8 years in jail. You're found not guilty. You're acquitted. What I want to know is, from you, I've only ever heard it from other people than you. How does not going to prison, how does being acquitted make you go to forming Wu-Tang Clan? Like, connect that dot to me.
Yeah, well, it's like I was headed in the wrong direction. Wu-Tang was already there. I already had my crew that was, down with me, rolling with me. And I just was choosing to use my leadership ability, my qualities in the wrong direction. My mother was so angry with me. She was so disappointed.
Yeah.
Right? She was so disappointed in me. She did not want to raise a criminal, and me following past steps of my brothers and all that.
Yeah.
And I was hurt by her disappointment. And when they said not guilty, and she said, you got another chance, I didn't waste that chance. I stopped smoking and everything. I was like, I stopped getting high. I just got focused. You know what I mean? People think 36 Chambers was made high. A lot of those tracks were made sober. A lot of that energy was focused energy, and I just stayed positive. Eventually, of course, I went back to partying.
Yeah.
But the positive, it was positivity, and I had an epiphany.
But what is that? Because here's the thing about 36 Chambers that I've always wanted to know is, like I said, groundbreaking hip hop record, widely considered one of the greatest, if not the greatest, hip hop record of all time. Wildly influential. The Library of Congress names it as one of the most notable recordings in American history. From everything I can read, you kind of knew that was going to happen. You kind of had faith when you said to the other guys in Wu-Tang Clan, like, "Hey, this is going to be a dictatorship. This is going to be a benevolent dictatorship, but I'm going to look after it. And I guarantee you 5 years from now, you're going to have a number one. I guarantee you 36 Chambers is going to be a masterpiece and blow up." Like, how did you know?
No, like I had an epiphany, right? That's the word they use. It's just like, and I just say this to any of your listeners or any young person out there, that positive, and even in the simple atom, which is the basic structure of life, right? It's just not going all the way down to the quark side. It's just stick with the atom.
Yeah.
But there's a proton and there's an electron.
Yeah.
But the proton outweighs the electron 1,001 minimum.
Yeah.
And so all that electron, all that negative energy that I was doing, it wasn't multiplying me. But when I did the positive, it multiplied me, and I realized that. And the epiphany had hit me. I was taking long walks, bro. I was walking, so I'll never forget, people thought I was like, they thought I had lost it a little bit. They could be like, this dude's just walking, talking to himself.
Yeah.
He's not, but it's just now I was calculating. And when I finished calculating, and the epiphany was clear to me, it was like, oh, actually, we're the best. What I have, my crew, and what we do is the best of what there is now. Because remember, I was in the industry already.
Yeah, you had that record before, yeah.
Yeah, and I met all my peers.
Yeah.
And I knew that my peers, who are great in their own right, they was missing something. And we had it. And what happens, it's hard to define it, but I will say one thing. that you probably could put your finger on is, in the old days, when you make a demo and you play it to somebody or to a record label to somebody, it's the demo that they fall in love with.
Yeah.
Then they send you to the studio and you make a version that's not the demo. And it becomes this other thing. And the people never hear the demo. Only your friends hear the demo.
Yeah.
I didn't want that to happen. I wanted the rawness of what we created to exist, to be shared with the public, not somebody going to come in and some guy going to say, oh, you can't peek this out. You got to do that. Man, get out of my way.
Yeah.
I'm making it to sound how we want it to sound because that's the sound that we grew up with. And probably because before hip hop was on old dusty tapes, right? Just some guys in the park who recorded it and played it, and that tape makes it to Staten Island.
Yeah, there's that grit, that soul, that at the heart of the music that can get buffed out pretty easily. But I know people who have come up to me and said, "Tom, I just made a record, and it's gonna be a life-changing record. It's gonna change the game entirely," and then it doesn't really happen. Like, what was it like to have that epiphany and have this feeling, and then to actually watch it come into fruition? To watch people start calling it the greatest hip hop record ever made. You know?
No, I'm grateful. It's a blessing. That's all I can say. It's just like it's a mercy. Right? I'm gonna say that.
But were you going like, oh, I knew it.
I've done that. Like people like, did you know? I'm like, yeah. You know what I mean? Like, and some of the Wu guys didn't know. I knew. You may ask me, Quan, go, nah, I didn't know. They asked me, yeah, I knew. I knew exactly because I was given the blessing to see it. So that's look, you get that. Every man in his life gets something, whether it's the first time you meet your woman, that's my wife. I knew it from the day I met her, right? The first time you get to a job, you're like, man, this is the job I've been waiting for. The first time you see a movie, I'm making movies, it's just like, it. And there's nothing nobody can tell you to deter you. And people try to deter me, right? But to be determined means you can't be deterred.
Yeah.
So I had a determined idea. It was like, no, it's not. The guys say, no, that won't work. You guys, I said, oh, yes, it will. No, look, they offered me money not to do
it. What did your mom say after she looks at you and says, hey, you got a second chance here, and then you take that second chance and make one of the greatest records of all time? What did she say?
Man, it was one of the most driving forces of my life for years. My mom's passed away in the year 2000. But if you look at my history, you see I didn't start missing until she passed. Because making her proud also was a driving force for me. I never had no gold records on my wall. All my platinums and gold was on her wall. Any accolade that I got, the first house I bought was her house. You know what I mean? It was my mom's, just to give you a quick story, 11 children, in and out of doors, welfare, cheese, and, grits for dinner.
Yeah.
We went through that phase and she was just always that rock, pops disappeared, step pops disappeared, whatever.
Yeah.
She just, she held it together, and the chance to bless her and to answer your question, I could go on about this, but the chance for her to look at me in my eye and say, I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
Man, that was everything. I was, oh yeah? Mom, you gotta hear this next one. And you wanna hear something funny, Tom?
Yeah.
But when she would try to come to the concert, I tell her don't come. Because even though I was doing something positive, I still was saying Wu-Tang Clan ain't nothing to fuck with, bring the motherfucking ruckus, shame on the nigga that tried to win. I was still using, and I didn't want her to hear me be that guy no more.
I don't mean to laugh. That's just really sweet. It's really lovely,
Yeah. She never seen me smoke a joint or nothing, yo.
Could you mind if I ask what was her name?
My mother's name was Linda.
Linda, man.
Linda G. Hamlin. I snuck her name in one of my films. I got a film called Love Beats Rhymes that I directed. And the name of the school is the Linda G. Hamlin. so that is never forgotten by me or my family. Anyway,
That's a beautiful thing. Let's go back. So you have these big records. You're not just making records for yourself for Wu-Tang. You're making records for other members of Wu-Tang Clan. You start making more and more records. You become this incredibly acclaimed producer. So let's go back to the classical music here. At what point are you going? Is there a point where you're going, I need to be able to write this down, or I need to be able to play an instrument. I need to be able to do a little bit more with music?
Yeah, 1997, right before we do Wu-Tang Forever, I'm buying all the equipment. You get money, I'm building a new studio.
Yeah.
And while I'm buying all that, you should see me coming out the store with all these boxes. I mean, 50 G's of this, we probably spent 300 grand. Most people who go to those stores, they happy to spend $1,000, here I am, the big RZA, money, new budget. They gave me $4 million to make the album. So I'm like in the store, I'm like, give me that, give me that, give me that, give me that. And some guy comes over to me and says, "You're not a real musician."
What?
I'm like, what you talking about? Like, I'm platinum. He's like, "Nah, man, you're not a real musician. You don't play instruments. You actually put musicians out of business."
Someone said that to you?
Yeah, he was angry. He was struggling. And so I bought a music theory book that day. And I started studying. I said, okay, I'll be a music. I won't do that. I will respect that there's people that got to study and know. And it's not, don't take it for granted. I didn't know what a C chord was. He was right. I knew what it sounded like. I knew how to put sounds together. I knew how to drake 5 things and make them and put the right balance. I had the ear, but I didn't have the knowledge and skill set like that. And so then I started learning. Once I learned the circle of fifths, that's why when you hear Wu-Tang Forever, you hear songs like Triumph and It's Yours, you hear those progressions. You hear the violin coming on Reunited, you see in 1 year, not even a year, in 6-7 months, boom, I'm now understanding what I was looking for, right? So then what happens immediately after that, it comes out, the album's #1, we sell millions of records. Then Jim Jarmusch comes to me and says he's doing a new movie he's going to start writing. He wants me to be the composer. And I was blessed too, Tom, to have a conversation with Quincy Jones, at the time as well. I was spending a lot of time with him. He was giving me knowledge and wisdom about music and things. And he did tell me, he's like, you're #1, your stuff is great. I see, you got progressions going on. He said, a real musician, they study 4 hours a day minimum. So are you doing that? I said, no. He said, well, you're not, so I'll start doing that. But he also said something to me, because he's a very challenging man. He said, yeah, I wrote my first movie score when I was 30. I said, wow. That sounds, because I thought scoring was an old man's job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, John Williams or something like that, yeah, that kind of thing, yeah.
Yeah, so when Jim Jarmusch comes to me, I'm 27. And I finished my first score at 28, so I beat Quincy Jones. By the time I get to Kill Bill, the knowledge is stronger. I get a chance to meet Danny Elfman, meet the Hollywood composers. I eventually do 12 movies as a composer. So it's an evolution.
So listen, I got the rap, but I want to ask you one more question before we go. Okay. So, it's a pretty amazing story, right? Like, you start out like selling newspapers on the sidewalk to try to make enough money for a turntable and a mixer, and now you're talking to me about scoring some of the biggest movies of all time, making this really incredible classical music piece, hanging out with the likes of Quincy Jones and all that. But here's my question about that. So when you got back these notebooks, these early mustard-stained pre-vegan notebooks, and you're looking through it and you're thinking to yourself, whether you know it or not, like this is a hungry artist. This is an artist who has something to prove. This is an artist who doesn't have a lot of money. This artist who doesn't know Quincy Jones. This is an artist who hasn't had platinum records. This is an artist who can't even afford a turntable. Like at this level of success, how do you tap into that hunger you had back then when you were unknown?
Well, the thing I think that happens, Tom, and that did happen, is that it was a person who was doing it just for the passion of it.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody said I was going to make money from sitting there writing those lyrics. And so this album was done the same way. I didn't get a budget for this album. I wrote it, and then I called the orchestra and said, hey, guys, how much is it going to cost me to record this thing? They said, what you mean? I said, no, I just want to share this. So that to me is the success of this, is that I did it. I didn't wait for somebody to give me a budget. I was hungry to show this, to share. I'm actually hungry to share this.
I hear what you're saying, like that the person who did it for the passion when you were a kid and writing those notebooks is the same person who's making this music for the passion now. I think your manager will fly to Canada and turn off my microphone if I keep talking to you any longer. But I'll tell you this, man, like I love this record. I love I kind of love everything you've done. It was a great joy to get to talk to you about music, and thanks for sharing your story with us.
Thank you, brother. Thanks for having me, Tom.